contract against. All right. Perfect tender rule. So the idea here is that when goods are sold, the seller of goods has to do everything they promised to do in the original contract, and if they fail in any way, they haven't perfectly tendered, and that gives the buyer some rights. All right. So in other words, when the seller, it could be delivers less than the contracted amount, delivers late. It honestly could be delivers early, depending upon how the contract is worded. But when the seller fails to deliver to the letter of the contract, then the buyer has the right to accept the goods, and if they do, they're obligated to pay for them per the original agreement. Reject the goods, which is send them back at the seller's expense. All right. Or split the baby, accept part, send the rest back. The rejected part still would be at the seller's expense. All right. However, sellers do have the right to replace defective or non-conforming goods within a reasonable amount of time. All right. So in other words, once the buyer has rejected, if the seller can cure, that means fix, get the buyer what they contracted for, then they've cured and they're entitled to collect the money agreed upon in the contract. Okay, so let's talk about the obligations of the buyer. All right, the main thing the buyer is obligated to do is pay for what they've ordered or pay for what they've contracted for. Right, that's the buyer's main obligation. All right, they do have the right to inspect goods before accepting or within a reasonable amount of time after the goods are delivered. And accept goods if the seller delivers what you ordered, then acceptance, which can be delivered by words, I accept, or signing a warehouse receipt. Conduct, which is not communicating rejection of the goods, or if the buyer doesn't reject, which is what I just said, if the buyer doesn't reject in a reasonable amount of time after the goods have been delivered, that's acceptance. Or if the buyer is also a retailer and says, begins to market the goods, begins to sell the goods, that's an action that indicates that the buyer thinks they own the goods, which is also an acceptance. All right.